I always believed that after 6 years together, I wouldn't be the last one to learn the truth. That day, I was only using my boyfriend's phone to browse the internet. Mine was charging. It had run out of battery. When the keyboard popped up, I didn't think much of it. I typed just the beginning. The next second, my phone filled in the rest. Wife. I froze. Because in the 6 years we had been together, he had never called me that. Not even once. Chapter 1. At our high school class beauty's wedding, one of our old classmates, already drunk and grinning ear to ear, leaned toward me and said, "You know, your boyfriend's been secretly in love with the bride for 8 years." The air froze for a moment. My stomach dropped. Instinctively, I turned to look at Vincent. His expression didn't change. He took my trembling hand, voice calm and gentle. "Don't listen to him, he's drunk." Before the guy could say more, the bride, Chloe, swept in with a laugh, a champagne glass in hand. "Say another word and Vincent's sleeping on the couch tonight." Her makeup was flawless, her tone playful, her smile directed at me. I'm sure Anna's smart enough not to misunderstand. Her soft voice smoothed the tension like warm spring air. Laughter followed. "Yeah, come on," and Vincent's totally whipped. "You can't joke about that." Old classmates joined in, teasing him. How he'd changed his wild ways because of me. How he'd turned down countless women for my sake. The mood lightened again. But I couldn't ignore it. From the moment Chloe appeared, Vincent's eyes had been glued to her. There was admiration there, maybe even a kind of blessing. And something else I couldn't quite name. Unease stirred in my chest. I whispered, "Vincent?" He blinked, as if waking from a trance, and gently turned back to me. Calmly, he picked up a shrimp and placed it in my bowl. "Eat it while it's hot." I stared at the tenderness in his eyes. And suddenly felt like a gust of wind had stolen the air from my lungs. He seemed to have forgotten. I'm allergic to shrimp. Chapter 2. Before I could say a word, Vincent realized what he'd done. He quickly picked the shrimp out of my bowl, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. "I'm sorry, Anna," he murmured, voice soft and slightly slurred. "Guess I haven't drunk in a while. My head's not exactly clear. Forgive me this time, okay?" His tone, low, hoarse, threaded with drunken charm, was half apology, half plea. He always knew exactly how to disarm me. Maybe I shouldn't have let one drunken comment make me question his loyalty. "Do I really seem that petty to you?" I smiled, letting it go. As the wedding wound down, most of the guests had already left, leaving a few of us old classmates catching up over half-empty wine glasses. My phone was charging, so out of boredom, I reached for Vincent's phone to browse online. I started typing "why." My phone autocorrected it to "a wife." My heart skipped hard. Vincent had never called me that. Before I could process what I was seeing, Vincent snatched the phone from my hands. His tone carried a faint irritation. "Why are you using my phone?" I opened my mouth, a question on the tip of my tongue. But before I could speak, his phone started ringing. I caught a glimpse of the caller ID. And every muscle in my body went cold. The name flashing on the screen was "wife." Vincent turned slightly, trying to block my view. But then a woman's voice came through the speaker, soft, familiar, unmistakable. It was today's bride, Chloe. Chapter 3. The voice on the other end of the line sounded slightly urgent. Vincent frowned, muttered a few words of explanation, and hurried off without meeting my eyes. I watched his back as he left. A chill crept over me, spreading until it reached every corner of my body, followed by a wave of anger so sharp it burned. Not long ago, I helped Vincent fill out some official paperwork, and his marital status was listed as single. So how deep must that old love run? How uncontrollable must it be? For him to secretly label someone else in his phone as wife? I don't know how long I sat there, staring blankly into nothing. By the time I came back to myself, most of the guests had already gone. Just as I was about to stand, a gentle voice called my name. Anna. I wiped my tears quickly and turned toward Chloe, forcing down the storm in my chest. Thank God you're still here. She exhaled in relief and took the seat beside me. Then she slipped a check into my hand. This is Vincent's wedding gift to me, she said softly. 80,000. It's too much, I can't take it. I tried to return it to him, but he refused. So? I figured I'd give it back to you. I stared at the check, unable to speak. Just a few days ago, my grandmother had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. We needed money for surgery, fast. I'd borrowed from everyone I could think of. Vincent's law firm had been struggling with cash flow, and he'd apologized to me for not being able to help. I'm sorry, Anna. Things are tight right now. The firm's funds are completely tied up. But this same man who couldn't spare a cent had somehow given Chloe 80,000 as a wedding gift. My mind went blank. It felt like something sharp split my chest open, my heart just wouldn't stop hurting. Vincent really was devoted, wasn't he? I tilted my head back, refusing to let the tears fall. Then Chloe's hesitant voice came again. There's actually another reason I wanted to return it. Your grandmother's sick, right? You'll need the money later. Think of it as my small contribution. She paused, then, almost casually, added. By the way, I heard Vincent didn't lend you the money when you asked. Her eyes flickered with pity, the kind that cuts deeper than cruelty. Vincent's unbelievable, she sighed. He wouldn't help his own girlfriend, yet he gives me such a generous gift. Her tone pretended to scold him, but every word was a taunt. And yes, it hit exactly where it hurt most. So much for the story of his unrequited love. Anna. Vincent's hesitant voice came from behind me. I took a long breath. Perfect timing. Chapter 4. Vincent must have sensed something was wrong. He reached out to touch my hand. And I pulled away, cold and sharp. He froze. What's wrong? I didn't answer. Instead, I hurled the check straight at his face. He didn't have time to dodge. The edge of the check sliced across his pale cheek, leaving a thin red line. He bent down, picked it up, and finally seemed to realize what was happening. Anna, please, let me explain. You're right. You should explain, I said, my voice shaking. Explain why you've never called me a wife, but it's in your phone's frequent words. Explain why Chloe's saved as a wife. That guy at the wedding wasn't lying, was he? You've been in love with her for 8 years, haven't you? Vincent went white, completely drained of color. I turned to look at Chloe. She stood quietly beside us, calm, almost unsurprised. A bitter laugh slipped from my throat. Tears followed, uninvited. So everyone knew. Everyone but me. I must have looked like such a fool. You never called me your wife, because in your heart, that title already belonged to someone else. You said your firm's cash flow was tight, that you couldn't lend me money. But you had no problem giving her 80,000 as a wedding gift. If you've always loved her, then why did you say yes, when I confessed to you? My voice cracked, trembling with rage and humiliation. You've loved her for 8 years, yet you dated me for 6. What did I ever do to deserve being used like this? Vincent said nothing. Not a word. And silence, in that moment, was worse than a confession. A few guests who hadn't yet left began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Only then did Vincent finally react. Anna, not here. It's Chloe's wedding, please, don't make a scene. We'll talk at home, okay? I looked at him, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. Even now. Even after everything. The only thing he cared about was saving Chloe's face. Chapter 5. Let's break up. The words came out flat, almost lifeless. I didn't even recognize my own voice. For the first time that night, Vincent's expression shifted, shock, maybe panic, it's like he wanted to say something. But before he could, Chloe stepped forward and grabbed my hand. "Anna, please, it's not what you think of Vincent and I." I jerked, ready to shake her off. When she suddenly let go on her own.
Ah!
Her cry rang out, followed by the dull sound of her body hitting the floor. I froze for half a second. So that's the trick, huh? Pathetic. But even the clumsiest act can work. If the audience wants to believe it. In an instant, Vincent was at her side, scooping her up into his arms. "Are you okay?" His voice trembled, full of panic and tenderness I'd never heard before. Chloe's face was pale as chalk, sweat beading at her forehead as she whimpered softly. Vincent turned toward me, his usually gentle face hardened with anger and accusation. "She's pregnant. Did you know that? If something happens to her, can you take responsibility?" I froze. Pregnant? For a moment, everything inside me went still. Around us, relatives and classmates gathered quickly, their voices sharp and self-righteous. How could she push a pregnant woman? What kind of person does that? Suddenly, I was the villain in someone else's story. But why? It wasn't my fault. It was Chloe who had let go. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I stared at Vincent's back as he carried Chloe away, my voice calm, too calm. "I didn't push her. There are security cameras in this hotel. Check them if you don't believe me." Vincent paused, just for a moment. Then he kept walking, holding her close. He didn't look back. Not once. Chapter 6. After that night, I blocked every way Vincent could reach me. I took a few days off and spent a long time lying around our rented flat, listless. 6 years of my heart had been poured into him. Every morning I told myself to let go, every night his face came back to me in pieces. One day, I fainted from not having eaten for too long. When I woke up, my mother was by my bedside, spooning porridge into my mouth, one careful spoonful at a time. I was almost surprised by how pampered it made me feel. My father had died when I was young. After my mother remarried, she left me with my grandmother in the countryside. Aside from sending a little pocket money each month, she never came back. When I was in 4th grade, she had another child, and the money stopped entirely. So it was nothing short of shocking that she had come to look after me. After she finished spooning porridge into me, she asked, casually, "So, you and Vincent broke up?" I froze. How did she even know about us? "Vincent told me everything," she said. Vincent had gone to see my mother? What on earth was he trying to do? He just had a childhood crush on another girl, what's the big deal? He didn't cheat on you. I'm not trying to shame you, but you've been with him 6 years, you're not some innocent kid anymore. Now that you've split, who's going to want you? A sour, helpless irritation rose in me. I cut her off. This is my business. If you came here just to lecture me, then you should go back. I struggled out of bed and nudged my mother toward the door. She persisted, still trying to smooth things over. From what Vincent told me, he doesn't want to break up, he says you blocked him. Vincent's a good kid, he started his own law firm at a young age. Isn't your brother just graduating? He's been begging to intern there. I stared at her in disbelief. So that was it, everything I'd been feeling suddenly made sense. Part of me wanted to laugh. I actually laughed for a moment, then swallowed it down, steadying myself. I answered coldly. I'm not getting back together with him. And I won't beg him for your son. Give it up. Chapter 7. Not long after my mother left, Vincent showed up. The apartment was one we'd once shared, and he still had a spare key. I hadn't turned on the main light, the room was dim, slicing shadows across his face. Silence filled the space between us. I'll transfer my share of the deposit to you, I said evenly. Leave the spare key, then go. Maybe my tone was too cold. For a brief moment, something uncertain flickered in his eyes, but he quickly steadied himself. Anna, we've been together 6 years, he said quietly. You won't even give me a chance to explain? Explain? I almost laughed. Didn't I give you that chance at the wedding? And what did you do? You stood there, hiding behind silence. You let everyone believe her lies, and you chose to believe her too. And now you go crawling to my mother to talk her into convincing me? Why, Vincent? Can't find anyone else to manipulate? Do I really look that easy to use? That's not it, he said quickly, clearly thrown off. I don't want to break up because I love you. I love you, Anna. You're the only one I love now. He took a breath. I admit it, I liked Chloe back in high school. But that was a lifetime ago. Since we got together, I haven't wanted anyone else. I never called you a wife, because that word means something to me. I didn't want to sound flippant or make you uncomfortable. I wanted to save it for when we were married, for when it meant something. As for why that word shows up in my predictive text, one of my recent cases involved a client who mentioned his wife a lot in testimony. That's all. He paused, then looked down at his phone, unlocking it. And about Chloe's name being saved as a wife. He opened a group chat, scrolling through messages. There's a stupid tradition at their weddings, kind of a prank. Someone suggested randomly changing the bride's contact name in a friend's phone to a wife, just so the groom would see it and freak out. They picked me. I refused, but I guess when I went to the restroom, one of them grabbed my phone and did it anyway. I didn't even know until that night. He gave a strained, bitter laugh. Didn't expect the groom to miss it, but you wouldn't. I froze. My eyes fell on Vincent's phone screen. The messages he showed me were timestamped before the wedding. It looked real. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't lying this time. Vincent exhaled slowly. About the money, he said after a pause. I never refused to lend it to you. That day, the firm really was short on cash. But the next day, funds came through. That $80,000 I gave Chloe wasn't just a wedding gift, it was repayment. Back when my firm was struggling the most, she anonymously wired me that exact amount. I was only returning what I owed. He tugged lightly at his tie, regret clouding his expression. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to misunderstand. But by hiding it, I made things worse. It was my fault for not explaining at the wedding. His gaze burned into me. When I saw the anger on your face that day, heard that accusing tone, my own temper flared. You were mad, and I was too. I couldn't stand that you didn't trust me, so I said nothing at all. But after a few days, I regretted it. I shouldn't have tried to win by silence. He reached out, his palm warm against the back of my cold hand. His voice dropped to a whisper. I really messed up. Please, Anna. Forgive me. For a long second, the room was quiet. Then I pulled my hand away. Vincent, just because you didn't technically betray me doesn't mean nothing happened. You know I loved you more than you ever loved me. I was the one who confessed first, you knew that, and you relied on it. You counted on me never leaving, no matter what you did. I steadied my breathing, my hands trembling slightly. You were waiting for me to crawl back, again. He went still, the realization flickering behind his eyes. That's how it's always been, hasn't it? Only this time. I didn't come back. I looked away. The ache inside me was small but precise, like 1,000 tiny needles pressing into my chest. Vincent, maybe you never really loved me. You just couldn't stand to lose someone who loved you without limits. Chapter 8. The next morning, my mother texted me in excitement. My brother had started his internship at Vincent's law firm. Then, almost timidly, she added. So? You and Vincent made up? I hesitated for a moment, then unblocked Vincent's number. I took a screenshot of my mother's message and sent it to him, just a single question mark. He replied instantly. Anna, you finally let me out of the blacklist? I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night. I love you, not out of habit, not because I'm afraid of losing someone who loves me more than I deserve. You said what we had wasn't equal. So let's start over. This time, let me be the one chasing you. I stared at the screen for a long time. To my surprise, I didn't feel a thing. The damage was already done. That night when my grandmother was in critical condition. What hurt me most wasn't that Vincent refused to lend me money. It was that, when I needed him the most, he chose to disappear. No call. No comfort. Just silence. Everything he was doing now felt like belated affection. And I didn't want it anymore. Over the next few days, luxury handbags and jewelry began arriving at my door, one package after another. I sent every single one back. Then one afternoon, my grandmother messaged me. Anna, Vincent just wired me a large sum of money. What's going on? I transferred it straight back to him. He refused to accept it. It's to make up for the night I failed you. Anna, please, let me fix this one mistake. He stopped answering my calls. So I decided to go to his new apartment and return the money in person. Halfway there, the sky opened up. Rain poured down, soaking me to the skin. When I finally arrived, the front door was ajar. Without thinking, I stepped inside. Lightning flashed outside, thunder rolling loud enough to drown my footsteps. The apartment was dark, only a sliver of light from the window illuminated the room. And there he was. Vincent, lying back on the couch. And straddling his waist, Chloe. Is it more exciting with a pregnant woman? Her voice was breathy, hoarse. You're such a hypocrite, Vincent. You talk about ending things, but one little invitation from me, and you come running. Tell me, what would Anna say if she saw this? Vincent said nothing. He only adjusted her hips, helping her find her balance on him. Lightning flared again, catching his face. Desire and indifference twisted together, the man before me a stranger. Chloe laughed softly, tracing her nails across his chest. But really, there's so much Anna doesn't know. Like how you only said yes to her confession out of spite, because I had a boyfriend back then. Or how, 3 years ago, when we reconnected, you started sleeping with me again. Or that night when she stayed at the hospital, keeping vigil over her grandmother's surgery, while you and I were busy spending the night together. A wave of nausea rose so violently that I bent over and retched. The sound wasn't loud, but loud enough. They both turned toward me. And when I lifted my head, I met Vincent's eyes. Chapter 9. Vincent had always been the calm one. I'd never seen him look so panicked before. As he scrambled off the couch, he tripped and fell hard onto the floor. He pushed himself up unsteadily, swaying as he staggered toward me, step by step. There was so much he seemed to want to say, but in the end, only one word came out. Anna. It was Chloe who broke the silence. She casually straightened her shirt, stood up with a smug little smile, and looked me over like I was beneath her. Oops. Guess we didn't mean for you to find out like this. But don't blame me. If it weren't for me, someone as ordinary as you would never have dated Vincent this long. Her tone was syrupy, her words sharpened like glass. You probably don't know this, she went on. 3 years ago, at the class reunion, you couldn't come because of work. That's when Vincent and I reconnected. After that night, he was going to break up with you. She gave a soft, self-satisfied laugh. I was the one who told him not to. I said you'd been good to him, that he shouldn't waste what you'd given him. For a second, I just stood there, numb. That reunion. I hadn't missed it because of work. I'd missed it because I was at home, building him a Gundam model, piece by piece, a birthday surprise. 2 nights without sleep, just to finish it in time. So while I was carefully crafting something for him with love, he'd been planning how to leave me. A bitter laugh tore from my throat. Vincent's face turned ghostly pale. He looked at me helplessly, guilt written all over him. He remembered, too. The day after that reunion, I'd shown up with dark circles under my eyes, holding the finished model. You once told me, I'd said. When you were a kid, your mom threw a birthday party for you and your stepbrother. She gave him the Gundam you wanted. You cried, and she yelled at you, didn't even let you have cake. You said your biggest wish was to find someone who'd love you, truly and completely. I'd looked up at him then, shy, hopeful, a little too earnest. So? Here's your Gundam. And me, too. His expression that day had been strange, his eyes swimming with something heavy, complicated. Then he pulled me into his arms, held me so tight I could barely breathe, and whispered hoarsely. Thank you. No one's ever been this good to me. Really. Thank you. The next day he gave me the necklace that had been sitting in his shopping cart, something I'd wanted for ages but never bought. When he fastened it around my neck, his breath was warm against my ear and his voice rough as he whispered, I'm sorry. I loved that necklace. I loved it so much I ignored the way his voice had sounded off, loved it so much I wore it for years without taking it off. Turns out the thing I treasured most was just the residue of his guilt after cheating. A slow, hollow pain settled in my chest, not for Vincent, but for the girl I used to be. I pulled myself back together and looked at the man I had loved since I was a teenager. What I felt now was only disgust. Even the memories of what I'd given him made me sick. I turned to Chloe and laughed, cold and sudden. Fine. I don't want this man anymore. If you want him, take him. You two deserve each other, rot together. Ignoring the ugly look on Chloe's face, I ripped the necklace from my throat and hurled it, along with the bank card, at Vincent. I came to give this back. Grandma doesn't need your money. It's filthy. I started to turn away, but Vincent grabbed my wrist. Don't go. Every nerve in my body screamed. My spine trembled with revulsion. I shoved his hand off with everything I had and slapped him hard, teeth bared as I spat the word through clenched teeth. Filth. He staggered back, head snapping to the side, stunned. Vincent, are you okay? Chloe moved to help him, but he shoved her away. She hadn't expected it, she hit the corner of a table and went pale. My baby, Vincent. She cried. Take me to the hospital, this is your child. A bright, sickening red tracked down her thigh. It was grotesque. Vincent didn't even look at her. He just stared at me, silent, desolate. Without hesitation, I walked out. Chapter 10. When I got home, I found my grandmother dozing on the couch. I nearly cried out in surprise and joy. Grandma, what are you doing here? Didn't the doctor say you needed to rest? She beamed and waved me over. Anna, time to eat, child. Grandma brought you lots of boiled eggs, kept them warm in my lap the whole way. They're piping hot. A strange, bitter ache rose in my throat, my eyes blurred. I fell into her arms and sobbed like I hadn't in years. Grandma was frantic with worry and tenderness, she patted my shoulder the way she used to when I was small, soft, steady, one beat at a time. Tell Grandma who bullied you. Was it Vincent? I'll go beat him up. After I cried it out, I told her everything, from the wedding to the apartment. Her face went red with fury, her fingers trembled. What a beast. She spat. Always wanting what's not his, men like that should come with a warning label, or no parts at all. As she ranted, tears filled her eyes too, she sniffled and wiped them away. Grandma can't even bear to hear it. Anna, you went through all that, how much pain it must have caused you. After we vented everything, I felt lighter, less broken, even a little relieved. Thank God you found out before the wedding. Imagine discovering this after marriage, then you'd have to go through divorce and the cooling off period. Just thinking about that is terrifying. Grandma nodded vigorously, half in horror, half in agreement. Exactly, there's a saying online, finding out before the wedding? That's not tragedy, that's luck. We shared a smile. After a moment, she hugged me tight, voice firm. No matter what, Grandma will always be your strongest support. I sniffed and nodded hard. I know. But Vincent wouldn't let it go. After that night Chloe had a miscarriage, yet he didn't stay in the hospital with her, he kept showing up near my building. Every time Grandma came back from the market she'd say she saw Vincent's car parked downstairs, smoke drifting out through the slightly open window. Isn't he sick in the head? He did you wrong, and now he plays the sorrowful lover to win you back. Look at those cigarette butts, so many of them. I hope he chokes on them. I didn't flinch. I placed a piece of meat on Grandma's plate and said dryly. Who knows? Maybe he's just a natural-born smoker. One day, Grandma burst into laughter when she came home. I was on the couch working on a PPT and asked her, curious, what had her so amused. I was about to tell you. That jerk got poisoned this morning and was taken to the hospital. My eyes lit up. I abandoned the PPT. Tell me everything. Apparently last night he smoked dozens of cigarettes in his car. What rotten luck, there was a heavy rainstorm, and he didn't open the windows. The smoke mixed with carbon monoxide from the engine, and he suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. Grandma exhaled in satisfaction, a grin spreading across her face. Serves him right. Good. After Vincent's poisoning, he quieted down for a while and stopped bothering me. But Chloe went into overdrive. She posted a long sob story on social media, and it went viral overnight. Her version went something like this: Vincent had secretly loved Chloe since high school, they'd both had feelings but never confessed, until I swooped in and stole him away. At her wedding, because of a drunken classmate's joke, jealousy flared up again. I allegedly shoved her to the ground during the commotion and killed her baby. She even posted photos, angles that looked convincingly like me pushing her. The story was salacious and full of so-called evidence. Vincent had recently won a high-profile case and been called the hottest lawyer online, gaining hundreds of thousands of followers. He had a sliver of fame. The internet devoured it and pushed Chloe's post everywhere. I wanted to laugh, partly in admiration for Chloe's talent for twisting truth into a story. What really happened? After Vincent pushed Chloe, she miscarried. Her husband reportedly went after Vincent with a knife. Chloe, in a baffling lapse, even blurted that Vincent was the father. Now the two of them were embroiled in divorce. I wasn't going to indulge lunacy. I collected my evidence and went straight to the police. The internet is not a lawless place. Fabricating and spreading lies can be a criminal offense when it reaches a certain scale, and Chloe had crossed that line. After filing my statement, I ran into my mother downstairs. The moment she saw me, she launched into a tirade. They say you were jealous of a pregnant woman, you pushed her, you killed her baby. Do you know that's a crime? How could you be so vicious? If I'd known you'd turn out like this, I never should have given birth to you. Chapter 11. For this woman who gave birth to me but never raised me, I'd long since stopped expecting anything. So I understood immediately what she was really getting at. My voice stayed calm. What's wrong with your son? Her expression shifted, guilt flashing across her face, before she straightened up, defensive again. Your brother's a lawyer, and now everyone knows he's got a criminal for a sister. How's he supposed to take cases after this? The past few days, his colleagues at the firm have been giving him dirty looks. He can barely eat. He's lost weight. If the police arrest you for what you did, what's he supposed to do then? Spend the rest of his life being mocked by his peers? The more she spoke, the angrier she became, her voice quivering with resentment. You're nothing but trouble. A curse to everyone around you. I told myself I didn't care, but when I met her eyes, when I heard those words, something inside still flinched. My nails dug into my palms. I took a deep breath. I didn't push her. I didn't break any law. Believe that or don't. As for your son, no one in his firm would ostracize him over some sloppy rumor post. Maybe you should ask him what really happened before blaming me. I'm not taking the fall for this. I'd met Vincent's colleagues before, sharp, ambitious people. They'd never distance themselves over something so flimsy. My mother opened her mouth again, but before she could speak, I heard footsteps behind us. Moments later, a cluster of reporters and paparazzi surrounded us, microphones and flashbulbs closing in. My mother froze, panicked. What are you people doing? A reporter's question cut through the air, sharp and rehearsed. Anna, what do you have to say about the claims that 8 years ago you stole another woman's boyfriend, and more recently, that you intentionally harmed a pregnant Chloe, causing her miscarriage? I answered evenly. None of that is true. She's lying. A weak, trembling voice rose from behind the crowd. Chloe. After the miscarriage, she looked fragile, ghost-like, so thin it seemed a breeze could knock her over. I brought them here, she said, her tone quivering but triumphant. I came to expose her crimes, to get justice for my baby. She repeated her version of the story again and held up printed evidence, photos shot at angles that made it look like I was pushing her. A crowd gathered fast, buzzing with whispers and judgment. I've lost a child myself, one woman said tearfully. I know what that pain feels like. Anna's disgusting. 8 years ago she stole their love, she's always been cruel. Someone else tried to reason. If they both loved each other, how could anyone steal him? Sounds like the guy's at fault too. But that voice was quickly drowned out by the chorus of outrage. She shot me a taunting look. The next second she collapsed into a plaintive accusation. I gave Vincent to you, why would you kill my baby? I watched her perform in silence. Why wasn't she acting on stage? Didn't she see how perfect she'd be for some emo director's film? The thought escaped me as a snort of laughter. Instantly, the crowd erupted, voices rising like a tide, all aimed at me. She's actually laughing? That's terrifying. Is this antisocial? Call the police, lock her up. I bit back another laugh and said quietly. Fine. Call the police. Chloe, if I really killed your baby, why didn't you call the police? Why post it online instead? For a moment panic flashed across Chloe's face. Someone in the crowd picked up on it. Right, if this were real, you'd go to the authorities first. Are you trying to get attention online, become an influencer? Chloe suddenly looked guilty. Then a hand grabbed her arm and begged, trembling. Please, miss, don't call the police. My daughter knows she was wrong. If you press charges, her whole life will be ruined. It was my mother. I watched, speechless, as a cold wave of helplessness rolled through me. Of course my mother was begging, not for me, but for her precious son, so he wouldn't be dragged down. Because of her plea, the crowd turned on me again. Even her mother says so, she must have killed Chloe's baby. What a cursed family. A wave of scorn and condemnation crashed over me from every direction. Chapter 12. Chloe met my eyes with a smug little smile. I smiled back. You really think you're the only one with evidence? Her expression faltered as I took out my phone and tapped play. On the screen, the hotel's security footage flickered to life. Chloe grabbed my hand, then abruptly let go and dropped hard to the floor on her own. The crowd gasped. Chloe's face drained of color. How did you get that footage? I had it. You mean you bribed the hotel manager to delete it? I said, looking at her like she was a child caught cheating on an exam. But that was days later. I asked for the footage the very night you framed me. Back then I'd only wanted to prove my innocence to Vincent, never realizing it would become the weapon that exposed her lies. So? Did Chloe stage that fall? Did she really make herself miscarry just to frame Anna? That's insane. I spoke evenly. The baby wasn't lost that night. What do you mean? There's more? Someone murmured. Under everyone's gaze, I pulled a small recorder from my bag. After that first false accusation, I'd gotten into the habit of carrying one everywhere I went. That night, when I went to Vincent's apartment to return the money, I happened to have it in my pocket. The moment I saw them together, I'd hit record. Then Chloe's syrupy voice filled the air, clear and damning. There's so much Anna doesn't know. Like how you only said yes to her confession out of spite, because I had a boyfriend. Or how, 3 years ago, when we reconnected, you started sleeping with me again. Or that night she stayed at the hospital with her grandmother while you and I were spending the night together. The room went dead silent except for her voice, cloying, mocking, revolting. And finally, the part where Chloe cried out, pleading for Vincent to take her to the hospital, admitting the child was his, broadcast now for everyone to hear. The crowd erupted. Oh my God, so Chloe and Vincent were both cheating? Anna's the real victim here. Disgusting, both of them. That poor girl and her grandma went through hell. If Anna hadn't kept the video and recording, they would have destroyed her. Homewreckers deserve to burn. The backlash hit Chloe like a boomerang. Her face twisted in panic. No. That's not true. She's lying. She faked the footage and forged the recording. Don't believe her, she's jealous, she's always been jealous that Vincent loves me. Her voice grew shrill, she raised a trembling hand, ready to slap me. You bitch. But a hand caught her wrist mid-swing. Enough. It was Vincent. He must have just been discharged from the hospital. His face was ashen, lips drained of color. When our eyes met, a flicker of hope flashed across his. As if he still expected to find something in mine. But I only looked back at him, calm and detached. As though he were nothing more than a stranger. Disappointment darkened his expression. He lowered his gaze, coughing weakly before turning to the reporters. His voice was steady, cold. I'm Vincent, the man involved in all of this. What Anna said is true. During our relationship, I betrayed her. I had an affair with a married woman, Chloe. And for the past 3 years, I kept that affair going, hurting Anna deeply. The crowd erupted in astonishment. No one had expected Vincent to stand up and condemn himself. So Chloe was lying all along? He never loved her back in high school? No man destroys his own a true love like that. Maybe he really did love Anna. Love? Please. If he loved Chloe, he wouldn't have kept her as his mistress for 3 years. If he loved Anna, he wouldn't have cheated. He doesn't love anyone, just himself. Chloe stood there, hollow-eyed, listening as the whispers cut deeper and deeper. Her face was paper white, her head bowed, lost in thought. Then the sudden wail of sirens broke through the chaos, freezing everyone in place. Chloe's head snapped up toward me. You called the police? I looked at her evenly. I just came from the station. I was giving my statement when I ran into all of you downstairs. You spread lies online and stirred up harassment. That's a criminal offense. You won't be walking free for years. Chloe, this outcome isn't anyone else's fault. You did this to yourself. When you cling to a man who's not worth saving, you lose everything, including yourself. Her gaze darted instinctively to Vincent, but he didn't so much as glance at her. All the color drained from her face, her body swayed like it might collapse. To be honest, I hated Chloe, but I pitied her too. Vincent had pushed her, ignored her through her miscarriage recovery, and still she couldn't bear to blame him. So she blamed me instead. I woke up. She never did. When the police took Chloe away, my mother shuffled toward me, fidgeting, and reached for my sleeve. Anna. I stepped back, out of her reach. Vincent, I no longer wanted. And her, I no longer needed. Maybe realizing she was losing me too, my mother's eyes flickered with confusion and fear. I misunderstood you. I was wrong, she whispered. Your brother said he was being ostracized because of you. I was angry, that's why I lashed out. But I was just scared you'd ruin your life. I carried you for 10 months, nearly died giving birth to you. I love your brother, yes, but I love you too. Her words stirred nothing in me. When a child who spent her life starving for love finally wakes from the dream of chasing it, she learns never to let love chain her again. Then Vincent spoke. Ma'am, you've been lied to. Your son only got into my firm through my connections. Later, he took money from a client under the table, broke firm policy. I was the one who covered for him so he wouldn't be fired. That's the real reason your son's being shunned. My mother stared at him in shock. Vincent's eyes were sharp, cold, contemptuous. His words landing like needles, enough to make her stumble. He looked briefly at me before continuing. Everything I did for your son was because he was Anna's brother. But now, I'm taking it back. I'll terminate him and file charges for misconduct. He'll face fines, and he might lose his law license entirely. My mother's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor. Chapter 13. When the chaos finally cleared, it was just Vincent and me left standing there. He spoke first, his tone tentative but laced with hope. Anna, all that evidence. You kept it hidden all this time because. I gave a soft, humorless laugh. Don't flatter yourself. Then my voice cooled. You're up for the top 10 Outstanding Lawyers Award soon, aren't you? Vincent froze, clearly caught off guard. I was planning to release all of this on the biggest day of your career, I said evenly. But unfortunately, thanks to Chloe's little stunt, I had to do it early. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. And I had never planned to let either of them walk away easily. Still, today's timing wasn't half bad. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Then Vincent tried, almost desperately, to cling to some illusion. It's okay. It's all in the past. From now on, we can. I cut him off, my voice calm and razor sharp. There is no from now on. Not with someone who lied to me. Who betrayed me. Vincent stiffened, lowering his gaze like a scolded child. Do you hate me? Yes, I said simply. I hate you. So don't ever show up in front of me again. I'm done. He went pale, lips trembling faintly. You have every right to hate me, he murmured. At first, I was just angry at Chloe, that's why I started seeing you. But later, I truly fell in love with you. A hollow laugh escaped him. You were so good to me, Anna. So good that I felt like if I didn't love you back, I deserved to be torn apart. I met his eyes, my tone light but lethal. If your idea of love is betraying someone for 3 straight years, then your love is pretty cheap. Vincent's eyes reddened slowly, the rims glowing with shame and desperation. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I just lost my mind for a moment. Chloe was the girl I could never have when I was young. His voice cracked. My mom ignored me all through childhood. I kept trying to find love in other people. When I saw Chloe again, she cried in my arms and said she'd never forgotten me, and I gave in. I was weak. I let out a sharp laugh, laced with contempt. Stop making excuses. You think you're the only one who's been starved of love? I didn't cheat, did I? For a moment, Vincent swayed, as if my words had stripped him bare. I met his eyes, really looked at him, for the first time since the breakup. And all I saw was a coward. Vincent, I said, my tone calm but full of disgust, you can't even own what you've done. You're pathetic. Then I turned around and walked upstairs. Without hesitation. Without regret. My phone buzzed with a string of messages from Grandma, asking when I'd be home for dinner. I quickened my pace. No man, especially not a cheating one, was worth missing a meal for. Chapter 14. Later, Grandma told me she'd heard that Chloe, from prison, had suddenly filed a lawsuit against Vincent, accusing him of intentionally causing her miscarriage. He didn't appeal. His law license was revoked, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Justice served, Grandma muttered as she lit incense in front of the Buddha statue. I couldn't have agreed more. That night, both of us ate with great appetite. Ate like we hadn't in weeks. The food actually tasted good.